I learned how cruel a secret could be in the glass corridor outside Conference Room 4, with a tray of untouched catered sandwiches sweating under fluorescent light, and Maris Holt standing 3 feet away from me, as if my mouth had never been against hers. The meeting had spilled out early. Investors, department leads, account directors, and half the creative floor stood in loose, expensive clusters, beneath the skylight, laughing too loudly because the quarterly showcase had gone well and because everyone wanted to be seen enjoying Maris's success. She stood at the center of them the way she always did, pale silk blouse tucked into black trousers, dark hair pinned carelessly enough to look effortless, one hand curved around a paper cup she would never actually drink from. People leaned toward her when she spoke. They always did. Even the men who outranked her waited for her reaction before deciding whether their own jokes were funny. 20 minutes earlier, in the locked sample room behind the fabric wall, that same woman had kissed me with her hand cupped around the back of my neck and whispered, "Stay close after the meeting." So I did. That was my first mistake. Not loving her. Not believing the softness she showed me in empty rooms. My first real mistake was obeying the sentence as if it had not been shaped by fear. I approached with my project folder pressed against my ribs, and my pulse carefully folded behind a professional smile. I had spent the morning revising the installation model she had asked me to save, and one of the investors had just credited the wrong person for my work. It would have been easy for Maris to correct it. A small thing. A sentence. Maybe 2. She knew every hour I had lost to that model, knew about the glue burn on my thumb, knew I had slept on my apartment floor beside cardboard terrain because my kitchen table was too small. "Maris," I said, quiet enough to be polite, but loud enough for the people closest to hear. "Can I speak with you for a second?" Her eyes found mine. That was the worst part. Not confusion, not surprise. Recognition lit her face for half a heartbeat before she extinguished it. One of the account girls, Blair, glanced between us. "Do you two know each other?" I waited. The folder dug into my arm. Maris's thumb brushed the rim of her coffee cup. Once, slowly, like she was smoothing a wrinkle out of herself. Then she smiled the clean, beautiful public smile that had made half the office adore her, and the other half want to be approved by her. "I don't think we've been properly introduced," she said. The air did not leave my lungs all at once. It became something hard inside me and refused to move. Blair laughed softly, not cruelly enough to be punished for it. "That's Ivy from fabrication support. She's on the temp rotation, right?" I was not on temp rotation. I had been a junior environmental designer for 11 months. My name was printed on the same team directory Maris used every day. My desk was 6 rows from hers. My scarf had spent last weekend over the back of her sofa. Maris knew that. Maris knew the exact sound I made when I tried not to laugh with coffee in my mouth. Maris knew I hated cilantro and loved old movie theaters and kept an emergency sewing kit in my bag because my mother had raised me to believe every disaster became smaller when you could mend one thing. Maris knew the scar under my left knee came from falling off a rented bicycle at 22, drunk on freedom and cheap wine, because I had told her in bed at 2 a.m. while she traced the pale line with a tenderness that made me close my eyes. But in the corridor, under the skylight, surrounded by the people who treated her approval like weather, she gave me nothing. "Right," I said. My own voice sounded almost calm. That surprised me. I had always imagined heartbreak as something noisy. I had not known it could arrive dressed as office etiquette. Maris's gaze flickered. The smallest crack. If we had been alone, I might have stepped toward it. I might have forgiven before she apologized. That was the danger of being loved privately by someone who was afraid of you in public. You learn to survive on crumbs and call them proof. I nodded once, turned, and walked toward the service elevator because the main elevators were full of people who had just watched me become a stranger. No one followed me. For 3 months, Maris had been teaching me 2 versions of herself. The one everyone at Glasshouse knew moved through the studio like she owned the light. She was the senior concept lead, the CEO's daughter, the woman clients remembered after forgetting entire presentations. She could wear a white blouse in a room full of ink, foam dust and coffee cups and leave untouched. She laughed rarely, but made people work for it. She remembered birthdays, destroyed lazy proposals with one sentence, and looked at every crowded room as if she already knew where the exits were. The Maris I knew had a chipped blue mug she refused to throw away because her little brother had painted it when he was 6. She took off her earrings the moment she entered her apartment and left them in a shallow brass bowl shaped like a moon. She talked to my houseplant when she thought I was asleep. She kissed like someone bracing for punishment, and held on afterward like someone startled to find she had not been abandoned. We had not planned to become anything. I had been assigned to help build a last-minute model for the Calder atrium pitch after the previous junior designer quit in a storm of tears and passive-aggressive emails. Maris stayed late because the pitch mattered to her father. I stayed late because rent mattered to me, and because some stubborn part of me wanted the senior team to stop treating fabrication like a basement full of hands without minds. At midnight, after 3 hours of silence and the smell of balsa wood, she had leaned across the cutting table and adjusted the angle of a tiny staircase I had carved from foam. "You see spatial flow better than Bellamy," she said. Bellamy was our associate director. The compliment should have felt like a promotion. Instead, because her voice had been low and because her sleeve had brushed my wrist, it felt dangerous. "You say that like it should comfort me. It should terrify you. Competence is punished here." I laughed before I could stop myself. She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her face altered. Not softened exactly. Opened. After that came small things. A coffee placed on my desk without a name. A red pencil left beside my revised elevation with only 3 words written in Maris's sharp handwriting. "Don't shrink yourself." A text at 11:48 p.m. asking whether I had gotten home before the rain. A second text immediately after. "Ignore that." HR would call it supervisory concern. I did not ignore it. The first kiss happened on the roof after the Calder pitch won. Everyone else was downstairs drinking champagne out of plastic flutes. I had escaped because praise made me awkward, and because watching Maris accept applause for a project that had devoured both of us made me feel too much too quickly. She found me beside the HVAC units, city lights glittering behind her like a cheaper imitation of her earrings. "You disappeared," she said. "I'm not good at rooms where everyone is pretending not to measure everyone else. That's most rooms." "Then I'm doomed." She came to stand beside me, close enough that the sleeve of her blazer touched my arm. For a while we watched taxis pulse along the avenue below. "You should have been in the client photo," she said. "I was holding the model upright with my knee behind the plinth." "I know." Her mouth tightened. "I should have said something." "You still could." She looked at me then, and I saw fear pass behind her composure like a shadow crossing a lit window. "My world is not kind when it notices something precious," she said. I should have heard the warning. Instead, because I was tired and 25 and wanted very badly to be precious to someone, I asked, "Am I something precious?" Her answer was to kiss me. For weeks afterward, I let that kiss explain away everything. Why she never touched me in elevators when other people were inside. Why her texts turned careful during office hours. Why she could spend Sunday morning reading on my cheap couch with her bare feet tucked beneath my thigh, then pass my desk Monday afternoon with only a nod fit for a colleague. Why, when Blair asked if Maris was seeing anyone, Maris said she was too busy for romance while the mark she had left under my collarbone burned beneath my sweater. I told myself she needed time. I told myself being loved by someone complicated required patience. I told myself privacy was not the same as shame. The trouble was, my body knew the difference before my pride allowed me to name it. Every time she called me darling in a dark kitchen, an ivy in the office like my name belonged on a form, something inside me folded smaller. Every time she said, "Not here," even gently, even with regret, I learned to look over my shoulder before leaning toward the person who had taught me to trust her hands. The corridor changed that. Her public smile cut through every excuse I had built for her and left me standing inside the truth. She had not panicked. She had chosen. I reached the service elevator, pressed the button, and watched my reflection tremble in the brushed steel doors. Behind me, laughter rose and fell. Someone said Maris's name with the bright entitlement of belonging to her circle. My phone buzzed before the elevator arrived. Maris. Ivy. Then, "Please wait." Then, "That wasn't what it looked like." I stared at the words until they blurred. The elevator opened with a tired metallic sigh. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the basement workshop. Only when the door shut did I answer. It was exactly what it looked like. I spent the rest of the afternoon cutting acrylic panels for a museum mock-up with the care of someone handling surgical glass. My colleague Theo, who ran the laser cutter and pretended cynicism was a religion, watched me from behind his safety goggles. "You're either about to cry or commit a very tidy crime," he said. "I'm fine." People who are fine don't measure twice with murder in their eyebrows. I aligned another panel. "Did you need something?" He held up both hands. "Only my continued existence." Theo and I were not exactly friends, but we had shared enough late nights in the workshop to know each other's survival habits. He knew I drank tea when upset, reorganized tools when furious, and became painfully polite when close to breaking. He did not know about Maris. No one did. That had been the point, apparently. At 5:30, when the office emptied into happy hour plans and client dinners, I stayed behind to finish labeling sample bins. I did not trust myself to pass the lobby. At 6:10, Maris appeared in the doorway of the workshop. She had taken down her hair. That small change hurt with ridiculous force. Private Maris wore her hair down. Theo glanced up from the cutter. His eyebrows climbed. "Are we being audited?" "I need to speak with Ivy," Maris said. Her voice carried the quiet authority that usually made people straighten. Theo looked at me. I kept labeling. "Ivy?" "I'm busy." Maris inhaled. It was subtle, but I knew her too well not to hear it. 5 minutes. "I don't think we've been properly introduced," I said, still writing. The marker squeaked across masking tape. In the corner of my vision, Theo went perfectly still. Maris said nothing. I capped the marker and looked up. She was pale under the workshop lights, all that elegant command stripped thin around the eyes. Good, some mean part of me thought. Then a kinder, sadder part answered, "No, not good, just fair." "Ivy," she said, lower now. "That's what people who know me call me." Theo made a soft, strangled noise and found something urgent to do in the storage room. Maris stepped inside but stopped several feet away. She did not crowd me. She knew I hated being cornered. The fact that she remembered made everything worse. "I panicked," she said. "No, you edited." Her mouth closed. "You looked at me, saw exactly who I was, and decided the room couldn't afford to know it." I pulled another strip of tape from the roll. My hands were steadier now. That frightened me more than trembling would have. "Congratulations. The room believed you. I am sorry." Not enough to say it upstairs. I couldn't do it there. "I know." I smiled and it felt like touching a bruise. That was the problem. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. My father was there. The Calder board was there. Blair was waiting for anything she could turn into a story. I thought, if I acknowledged you like that, without warning, it would put you in the center of something ugly. Don't make this protection. The words cut sharper because I did not raise my voice. Maris flinched anyway. "I'm not," she said. "You are. You're trying to make your fear sound like a favor you did for me." Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Maris had too much discipline for tears in basements. "What do you want me to do?" That question might have saved us 2 weeks earlier. In that moment, it sounded like a burden she was handing back to me. "I wanted you to know me before someone else asked." I picked up the labeled bins and carried them to the shelf. It gave my hands something to do, and my body a reason not to reach for her. When I turned around, she was still there, as controlled as a statue trying to apologize. "Can I come over tonight?" she asked. The private world opened in my mind with humiliating ease. Her shoes beside my door, her blazer on my chair, her face bare of office armor in the light from my refrigerator. I wanted that world so badly I almost hated myself. "No. Ivy, you don't get to be unknown to me upstairs and known to me after dark." That was the first boundary I ever gave her without softening it. I expected her to argue. Instead, she nodded once, as if I had handed her something breakable, and she meant to carry it carefully. "Okay," she said. She left without touching me. For 3 days, she did not text, except about work. For 3 nights, I did not sleep properly. Because my apartment still held the evidence of her tenderness. The tea she liked. The spare charger she had forgotten. The paperback she had left on my windowsill, with a receipt tucked inside as a bookmark. I gathered the items into a paper bag, then took them out again, then put them back. On the fourth morning, I brought the bag to work and placed it under my desk like a surrendered animal. I expected the office to move on. Offices always did. They swallowed humiliation quickly and repurposed it as weather. But Glasshouse had an appetite for invisible drama, and by Monday the corridor incident had acquired extra details. In one version, I had cornered Maris for credit I had not earned. In another, I had a crush on her and embarrassed myself in front of investors. Blair did not create every rumor, but she polished them until they reflected her. That week, I made myself stop looking toward Maris's office. It was harder than it should have been, because everyone looked toward Maris's office. The glass walls made her visible from half the studio, framed by shelves of white models and client books, sunlight sliding over her desk in disciplined rectangles. People drifted in and out all day. Account managers, interns, directors, friends. She belonged to the building in a way I did not. I began eating lunch downstairs in the public atrium, instead of at my desk. That was where people from the neighboring architecture firm came through, where students from the Design Institute bought coffee, where freelancers opened laptops and pretended not to listen to each other. It felt less like Glasshouse territory. It felt like air. On Thursday, Dahlia Reyes sat across from me without asking. I knew her by sight. Everyone did, though not in the same gravitational way they knew Maris. Dahlia worked for North Pier Studio, the landscape architects on the museum project. She had warm brown skin, short curls that never seemed to obey gravity, and a habit of wearing bright socks with severe black outfits. She was the kind of person who made a table feel less institutional just by dropping her sketchbook onto it. "You're Ivy Lane," she said. "That depends who's asking." "Dahlia Reyes, I'm asking because your courtyard drainage solution saved our planting plan from becoming a decorative swamp." I blinked. That was supposed to be Bellamy's revision. It was labeled Bellamy's revision. The drawing language was yours. I should have been suspicious of flattery, but Dahlia said it like a technical observation. She opened a salad container, stabbed a tomato with unnecessary aggression, and added, "Also, Bellamy would never draw a maintenance route that humane. He hates service workers in the abstract." A laugh escaped me. "There," she said. "I was told you were terrifyingly quiet." "Who told you that?" "People who think quiet means unavailable." She tilted her head. "Are you?" The question landed with enough directness that I looked away first. "I'm eating lunch." "That is not an answer. It's the only one I have today." "Fair." Dahlia smiled, not offended. "Then I'll try a smaller question. Are you going to the Pier screening tomorrow? They're showing short films about cities and grief, which sounds pretentious, but one of them has a laundromat full of plants. I didn't know about it. Now you do. I might be busy. With something you want to do?" That question should not have felt intimate. It did because lately so much of my life had been organized around what someone else feared. "I don't know," I said honestly. Dahlia softened without making a performance of it. "Then think about it. No pressure." She tore a corner from her sketchbook, wrote her number with a green pen, and slid it across the table. "For the screening, or for drainage emergencies?" I looked at the number. Do drainage emergencies usually require phone numbers? In my experience, everything important eventually involves water going where it shouldn't. I laughed again, fuller this time. That was when I felt the atrium change. It was not silence. It was attention shifting. That subtle current bodies create before mouths catch up. I followed Dahlia's glance and saw Maris standing near the coffee bar with Blair and two account directors. Maris's expression had not changed enough for anyone else to read it, but I read it. The stillness. The hand tightened around her cup. The way her gaze moved from Dahlia's number on the table to my face. For 10 days, Maris had respected the distance I asked for. I had hated her for giving it, and hated myself for wanting her not to. But watching another woman make me laugh in public did something to her discipline. Blair said something in her ear. Maris did not respond. She walked toward our table. Dahlia watched her come with curious interest. Weather incoming? Something like that. Maris stopped beside us. Up close, I could see the strain beneath her composure. It pleased me less than I expected. "Ivy," she said. Dahlia's eyebrows rose. She looked from Maris to me, then wisely took a slow sip of water. I folded the scrap of paper once and placed it inside my notebook. "Can I help you?" Maris's jaw moved. "We need to discuss the museum revisions. Bellamy has the deck. I'm asking you. Are you?" I looked at her with the polite blankness she had taught me. "I'm sorry, have we been properly introduced?" Dahlia choked on her water. The words did not come from anger alone. They came from the part of me that had been left standing under a skylight while Maris chose an audience over the truth. Still, the moment they left my mouth, the atrium sharpened around us. Conversations did not stop, but they thinned. Nearby tables tilted toward us by degrees. Maris went very still. I saw it then. Not just hurt, but recognition. She understood exactly what I had returned to her because she had created it. "No," she said quietly. "I suppose not." For one reckless second I thought she would walk away. Instead, she turned to Dahlia. "Maris Holt," she said, extending her hand. "Senior concept lead at Glasshouse." Dahlia wiped her fingers on a napkin and shook it. "Dahlia Reyes, occasional drainage prophet." Maris did not smile. "I know your work. Good things, I hope. Mostly. High praise from your family, I hear." That almost earned a smile. Almost. Then Maris looked back at me. Her voice changed, not louder but steadier. "And Ivy Lane is not on temp rotation. She is the designer who solved the Calder model and the museum courtyard transition. We worked together." It was not enough. It was also the first public truth she had given me. Blair had drifted close enough to hear, so had two interns pretending to study a vending machine. I felt their attention, sharp and hungry. "You didn't come over here to update my job description," I said. Maris's composure flickered. "No." "Then why?" Her gaze dropped briefly to my notebook, where Dahlia's number had disappeared between pages. When she looked up, jealousy was there, but not the theatrical kind. It was quieter and uglier, because she knew she had no right to it. "I wanted to know if you were free after work." A sound moved through the nearby table. Dahlia leaned back, her expression unreadable, but not unkind. I hated that my chest hurt. I hated that some stupid loyal part of me still wanted to answer yes, just because Maris had asked where others could hear. "No," I said. Maris nodded once. "Okay." "Okay?" I asked. You answered. Her throat shifted. "I'm learning the difference." Then she left. The atrium exhaled. Blair followed with the expression of someone denied the ending she wanted. Dahlia waited until Maris was out of earshot before saying, "Well, that was either a museum revision or an emotional hostage exchange." I covered my face with one hand and laughed because the alternative was something humiliating. Dahlia's voice gentled. "Do you want that number back? Or should I pretend I didn't see all of that?" I lowered my hand. "You can see it. Just don't make me perform an explanation." I hate performances without proper lighting. The kindness in that almost undid me. "I'm not asking you out to make her jealous," Dahlia said. "For the record. I know. And I'm not withdrawing the offer just because there's a complicated woman in a very expensive blouse. She's always complicated. The blouse varies." Dahlia smiled. "Then come to the screening because you want to, or don't because you don't. Those are the only two respectable options." I went. Not because I wanted to punish Maris. Not entirely. I went because Dahlia asked like my answer belonged to me. Because the laundromat full of plants sounded ridiculous enough to be healing. Because on Friday at 6, when I stood in my apartment wearing the black sweater Maris once said made me look like I knew secrets, I realized I had spent too many evenings waiting to be chosen by someone absent. The screening took place in a converted warehouse by the river, where folding chairs sat beneath strings of exposed bulbs, and the concrete walls wore old paint like memory. Dahlia arrived with 2 paper cups of cider, and no assumption that one was mine until I accepted it. She introduced me to 3 people from her studio, without making me feel like a guest being displayed. She asked what I thought of the films, and listened to the answers. When I stumbled over a technical opinion because I was used to being interrupted, she waited. That waiting worked on me more than flirtation would have. After the final film, we walked along the river with our hands in our coat pockets. It was cold enough that the city lights looked brittle. "You're thinking about her," Dahlia said. I winced. That obvious? Only to someone who has also been an idiot over a woman with excellent posture. I laughed, then sighed. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I asked you to a film screening, not a blood oath." She hurt me. I gathered. And I still miss her. That happens. Feelings are rude. We stopped near the railing. Across the water, office towers shone with people working late in rooms stacked above each other, like lit compartments of ambition. Dahlia looked at me, her expression open. "I like you, Ivy. Not because you made someone jealous. I liked you before I knew there was someone to make jealous. I like how you draw circulation paths. Like you care who gets tired. I like that you laugh late. Like you're deciding whether the joke deserves you. I would take you out properly if you wanted that." There it was. The clean, honest thing. No shadows, no hidden door. My heart did not leap the way it did with Maris. It settled. That was a different kind of gift. "I don't think I can do proper yet," I said. Dahlia nodded, disappointed but not wounded into cruelty. "Then don't use me as almost." "I won't." "Good." She smiled a little. "Almost is insulting. I'm at least a solid, maybe, in better circumstances." "You are." "Excellent. Put that in writing if my ego collapses later." We parted at the subway with a hug that did not pretend to be less than affection, or more than it was. I went home, carrying the strange ache of being wanted kindly. Maris was waiting outside my building. She stood beneath the flickering awning in a dark coat, hair damp from the mist. She looked less like the office's golden standard, and more like a woman who had walked too long without knowing what she would say when she arrived. I stopped at the edge of the sidewalk. "No." She lifted both hands slightly, palms visible. "I'm not here to come in." "Then why are you here?" "To return this." She held out my green scarf. I had forgotten it at her apartment the night before everything broke. It looked small in her hands. "You could have brought it to work." I thought that would make it into theater. "And waiting outside my building isn't?" Her mouth tightened. "Maybe. I'm bad at this without the script." The honesty disarmed me for exactly 1 second. Then I remembered the corridor. "Maris, you can't keep appearing in private every time public consequences scare you." "I know. Do you?" "I am beginning to." She looked exhausted. "I went to my father today." That was new enough to make me pause. "And?" "I told him I mishandled the Calder credit. I told him the museum deck needs to be corrected before Monday. Your name will be on the internal authorship record." I stared at her. "Why?" "Because it's true." That answer would have been useful 10 days ago. "I know." "What did he say?" "He asked whether I was compromised." The word made my skin prickle. By me? By caring about someone who works under the same creative director. By letting personal attachment affect credit. By failing to disclose. She swallowed. "He was not entirely wrong about the ethics. He was wrong about your work." I had been angry enough to forget that part. We did have a workplace problem. One Maris had made uglier by trying to hide it instead of handle it. She had influence. I had vulnerability. Desire did not erase structure. What happens now? I asked Bellamy to move your evaluation to Priya through the end of the museum project. I removed myself from any formal review of your work. HR has the disclosure that I should have made before anything happened between us. My mouth went dry. "You disclosed us?" "I disclosed that we had a personal relationship. Past or current is up to you to define." Cars hissed along the wet street. Someone's television glowed blue in an apartment above us. The world continued with offensive normality. "You should have talked to me first." "I know." Her face tightened. "I didn't name details. I didn't frame you as responsible. I said I had failed to manage the conflict and would accept whatever reassignment was required. That was not a grand romantic gesture. It was paperwork, accountability, the unglamorous architecture of repair. Somehow, it shook me more. I don't know what to do with that, I said. You don't have to do anything. She held out the scarf a little farther. I'm just giving back what is yours. I took it. Our fingers did not touch. Maris looked like she noticed and accepted that too. Did you enjoy the screening? She asked. The question was careful, but not casual. Yes. Good. Don't say that like it costs you. It does, she said with a small, humorless smile. But that doesn't make it less true. I wrapped the scarf around my wrist instead of my neck. Dahlia is kind. I can tell. She asked me out because she likes me, not because I'm useful, not because I'm hidden, not because I'm safe after hours. Pain moved through Maris's face, clean and deserved. I know. I told her I couldn't. Maris closed her eyes for half a second. Relief tried to rise in her. I watched her stop it before it reached her mouth. Thank you for telling me, she said. It wasn't for you. No, she said. I know. She stepped back. Good night, Ivy. I stood under the awning after she left, holding my scarf, feeling the first terrifying shape of a truth I did not want. Maris had hurt me badly, and she had begun to change in ways that mattered. Both could be true. Neither canceled the other. On Monday, my name appeared on the museum deck, not in tiny type under fabrication support, not buried in the appendix. On slide 3, beneath Bellamy and Priya, was Ivy Lane, Environmental Design and Circulation Studies. By 10 o'clock, 3 people had congratulated me with the awkward energy of colleagues. Realizing they had underestimated someone publicly enough to be embarrassed, Bellamy avoided me until the design review, where Priya asked me to explain the courtyard transition directly to the client. Maris sat at the far end of the conference table and did not rescue me. That mattered too. She did not step in to translate, or validate, or make my competence seem like a gift she had discovered. She let me speak. When the client asked a difficult question about winter access, I answered it. When Bellamy tried to interrupt, Priya said, "Let Ivy finish." I did. Afterward, Theo cornered me by the printer with 2 terrible vending machine coffees. You looked like a person who deserved a beverage and a witness, he said. This tastes like burnt pennies. Correct. Success should keep us humble. I took the cup anyway. Across the studio, Blair was watching me with narrowed curiosity. Beside her, Maris spoke to Priya, hands clasped behind her back. She did not look over. I knew, because I checked too many times. The distance between us changed shape over the next 2 weeks. It stopped being punishment and became space. I learned the difference reluctantly. Punishment still orbited Maris. Space returned me to myself. I spent evenings at the workshop refining my portfolio instead of waiting for texts. I had dinner with Theo and his boyfriend, who made pasta in a kitchen so small we had to store the salad spinner on a chair. I met Dahlia for coffee once, not a date, and we argued cheerfully about whether public benches should allow lying down. She continued liking me with enough grace not to press her advantage. Maris and I spoke only when work required it. She was careful, sometimes too careful. There were moments when I caught her about to say something personal before she replaced it with a project note. There were moments when my hand almost remembered the shape of her waist as she passed behind me in the materials library. I did not pretend those moments meant nothing. I simply stopped letting them decide for me. The first real confrontation after the atrium happened on a Wednesday night in the archive room. I was photographing tile samples for the museum palette, alone among flat files and drawers, labeled in a handwriting older than half the staff. Rain tapped against the high, narrow windows. The office beyond had emptied into blue carpet and cleaning carts. I heard the door open and knew it was Maris before she spoke, because my body still knew things my mind wished it did not. I can leave, she said. I adjusted the tripod. Do you need samples? No. Then why are you here? I saw the light. That is not an answer. A pause. No, it isn't. I took the photograph. The camera clicked with bureaucratic finality. Maris came no closer than the end of the table. Blair told the accounts team that you used me to get your name on the deck. I laughed once. It did not sound like amusement. Of course she did. I corrected her. Thank you. And then I realized I was angry because she made you sound calculating, but I had allowed the first version of that story to exist when it benefited me. That made me look at her. Her face was bare of performance, tired in a way makeup could not hide. I'm not telling you because I want credit for correcting it. I'm telling you because I need to understand the pattern out loud. Careful, I said. That sounds like growth. A brief, surprised smile touched her mouth and disappeared. Uncomfortable, isn't it? Deeply. Then silence came, but not the old kind. This one had work inside it. Maris looked at the tile samples. When you said I edited, you were right. I lowered the camera. I know. My entire life has been editing. My father edits the family into a brand. Blair edits insecurity into charm. Clients edit people into functions. I thought I was resisting it by keeping one part of my life private. Her fingers touched the edge of the table, then curled back. But I edited you until the public version of my life could survive you. That was cowardice. I wanted to fold my arms. I wanted armor. Instead, I stood with my hands at my sides and let the words land. Why were you so afraid? She did not answer immediately. My mother left when I was 14, she said finally. Not dramatically. No throne plates. One day she was in all the photos. The next day my father had staff remove them before a donor dinner. He said dignity meant not allowing private pain to become public weakness. I believed him for longer than I should have. The sympathy that rose in me was unwelcome, but real. Maris. I am not offering trauma as an invoice. Good. I wouldn't pay it. That earned another faint smile. This one sadder. I know. She looked at me then, fully. I loved having you somewhere no one else could reach. I told myself it was because I wanted to protect you from being consumed by this place. But part of me liked that our life was untouched, because it meant I never had to risk it being judged. I never had to be seen wanting. I never had to let anyone know you could hurt me. There it was. Not an excuse. A confession that implicated her. And then you hurt me first, I said. Yes. The word was simple enough to break something loose in my chest. I turned back to the samples because looking at her made honesty feel too close to forgiveness. I don't know whether I can trust you again. I know. I miss you. Her breath caught, but she did not move. I miss you, I repeated, because I needed to hear that missing her did not make me weak. But I don't miss being hidden. I don't miss checking hallways before touching your hand. I don't miss becoming careful so you could stay admired without complication. You shouldn't. No, I shouldn't. She nodded, eyes bright. What do you need from me? The old me would have answered in a way that gave her a map back to me. The new me was not finished being made. I need you to stop asking for instructions on how to become brave. Maris absorbed that, like a blow. If you want to be different, I said, be different when I'm not there to reward you for it. She left the archive room a few minutes later. She did not ask to hug me. She did not ask whether there was still hope. I appreciated both things so much that I cried after the door closed, quietly and angrily, among drawers of stone and tile. The next stage of Maris's change happened without romance attached, which made it harder to dismiss. She resigned from the Calder Social Committee after Blair made a joke about basement girls with ambition during a planning meeting. Not because I was in the room, I was not. Theo told me, eyes wide with the reverence of a man reporting a natural disaster. Apparently, Holt looked at Blair and said, ambition is only embarrassing to people who inherited rooms they didn't earn. Then she walked out. I tried not to smile. Failed. She also stopped eating lunch with the fifth-floor circle every day. Sometimes she sat alone in the small courtyard with a book. Sometimes Priya joined her. Once, Dahlia did. I watched from inside the atrium, suspicious of how civilized the universe had become. What did you two talk about? I asked Dahlia later, against my better judgment. Rain gardens, the ethics of inherited influence. You, very briefly. I groaned. She asked if I thought she was making you uncomfortable by staying away. What did you say? That your discomfort was not a group project. Thank you. You're welcome. I also told her her shoes were impractical. That must have wounded her deeply. She recovered with elegance. Annoying woman. The first time Maris introduced me as something more than a colleague did not happen in the grand way rumors would later claim. It was accidental, almost. A client from the museum board visited the workshop with Priya and Bellamy. I was adjusting a suspended pathway model when the client, a silver-haired woman with a diamond brooch and the impatient kindness of old money, asked, "And who is responsible for this lovely bit of clarity?" Bellamy opened his mouth. Maris, who had come down to deliver revised lighting notes, said, "Ivy Lane." The client turned. "Ah, Ms. Lane, you have a gift." "Thank you," I said, startled. Then the client looked at Maris with the warm familiarity rich people reserve for other rich people's children. "Is this the Ivy I've heard about?" The room tightened. Maris had a choice. I saw it arrive, saw the old calculation reach for her face. She let it die. "Yes," she said. "This is Ivy. Not my girlfriend. Not then. Just, this is Ivy," said with enough warmth that the client smiled, and enough steadiness that Blair, who had appeared at the doorway as if summoned by gossip, went still. It was small. It was enormous. It did not fix us. It did give me the strange feeling of watching a locked door open from the inside. The lunch scene that changed everything came 2 Fridays later. Glasshouse hosted an open studio day twice a year, which meant the atrium filled with clients, alumni, students, donors, and people who used the word innovation while standing too close to scale models. Food stations lined the mezzanine, name tags flashed on lapels, everyone performed casual brilliance. I wore a green dress because it made me feel like myself, and low heels, because I had learned the hard way that dignity suffered when your feet did. My portfolio model sat on a plinth near the central staircase, part of a junior showcase Priya had insisted I join. For the first hour, I answered questions from students and a retired architect who smelled like cedar and told me my section cuts had moral patience, which I decided to accept as a compliment. Maris was everywhere and nowhere. She guided donors through the main exhibit, introduced Priya to a foundation director, and corrected a contractor with such calm precision that the man thanked her for the privilege of being embarrassed. She did not approach me. She did not avoid me either. Once, across the room, she lifted her glass slightly in acknowledgement of my model. I nodded back. That was all. At noon, I escaped to the staff lunch area behind the atrium with a plate of fruit and the last of the decent bread. Dahlia found me 5 minutes later, carrying 2 tiny desserts stolen from the donor table. "I bring tribute," she said. "You bring evidence." "Only if caught." We sat at one of the long communal tables, half filled with staff from different firms. Around us, conversations overlapped. Budgets, bad coffee, internships, someone's impossible client. Dahlia told me about a proposal she was developing for a public garden under an elevated train line. She spoke with her hands, sketching invisible paths through the air, turning ugliness into possibility. I liked watching her think. "I have a question," she said eventually. "Is it about drainage?" "Emotionally, perhaps." I braced. She placed her fork down. "There's a gallery walk next Saturday in Ridge Market. Not work adjacent. Not a networking trap. Just bad wine and good arguments about art. I'd like to take you." The table around us did not go silent, but the part of me trained by secrecy reacted as if a spotlight had snapped on. An honest invitation, given in daylight, among people who could hear. No shame, no code. Dahlia saw me process it and did not rush to fill the space. Before I could answer, someone behind me dropped a spoon. I looked up. Maris stood at the end of the table with a donor packet in one hand. She had clearly come through the staff area as a shortcut. Or maybe she had come looking for me. I did not know which possibility made me angrier. Her gaze moved from Dahlia's face to mine. The jealousy was there, yes, but by then I knew to look beyond it. Beneath it was fear, and beneath that, the beginning of comprehension. Not that Dahlia might take me away, but that I might walk toward someone who did not require invisibility. Dahlia turned and gave Maris a polite nod. "Hi." Maris nodded back. Her hand tightened once around the packet. Then she looked at me. A dozen old patterns waited. She could retreat into politeness. She could ask for a work conversation and make me follow. She could use authority because it was easier than vulnerability. She could pretend this was nothing and bleed privately later. Instead, she said, "I'm interrupting." "Yes," I said. A few people glanced over. Maris noticed. Of course she did. For the first time since I'd known her, she did not seem to use being watched as instruction. "I'm sorry," she said to Dahlia. "I won't stay." Dahlia's expression softened with reluctant respect. "Okay." Maris looked back at me. "I wanted to tell you that I corrected the donor brochure. Your model is listed under your name in the afternoon handout. The printed copies were wrong." Something in my chest moved. "Thank you. You earned it." She should have left then. Maybe she meant to. But a voice from the doorway called, bright as broken glass. "Maris, there you are." Blair entered with 2 donors and Maris's father. Graham Holt looked exactly like the kind of man who believed buildings, people, and weather should obey. Tall, silver at the temples, beautifully tailored, with a smile that could pass as warmth, until you noticed it never reached the deciding part of his eyes. I had seen him across rooms many times. Up close, he made the staff area feel suddenly underfunded. Blair's gaze slid over Dahlia, then me, and sharpened with delight. "Oh, are we having a junior lunch?" The insult was mild enough to deny. That was her favorite kind. Maris turned. "We're having a conversation." Graham's eyes moved to me. "Ms. Lane, isn't it?" The fact that he knew my name should have felt like progress. It felt like being entered into a ledger. "Yes. Maris has spoken highly of your recent work." I felt Maris go still. "That's kind of her," I said. Blair smiled. "Maris is kind to strays. It's one of her few sentimental flaws." Dahlia's chair scraped softly. She did not stand, but the movement carried warning. I could have answered. I had learned sharper things in the past month, but Maris spoke first. "Don't call her that." The room changed so quickly it almost made sound. Blair blinked. Graham's expression cooled by 1 precise degree. Around the table, conversations faltered. Blair laughed. "I was joking." "No," Maris said. "You were measuring whether humiliation would pass if wrapped in charm. It won't." My skin prickled. Dahlia looked down at her plate, hiding a smile. Graham said, "Maris." There it was, the leash, spoken softly. Maris did not look at him. She looked at me, and for once there was no plea in her expression, no demand that I understand, just a choice being made where everyone could see the cost. "I'm sorry," she said to me. I went still, not because she apologized. She had done that before, because of where she did it, because of who stood behind her, because this apology could not be folded into a private kitchen and kept safe from consequence. "For the brochure?" I asked, though I knew. "For pretending not to know you when I knew you better than anyone in this building." Someone at the table inhaled. Blair's mouth parted. Graham's face became unreadable. Maris continued, voice steady enough to cut. "For allowing people to misunderstand your place here, because correcting them would have revealed mine. For making privacy into a hiding place and calling it protection." My eyes burned. I hated that. I loved that. I did not move. Graham said, very quietly, "This is not the setting." Maris finally turned to him. "That is what you taught me to say whenever honesty became inconvenient." The donors looked like they would rather be trapped in an elevator. I stood because sitting while my life became public felt unbearable. Dahlia's hand brushed my wrist under the table, brief and supportive, then withdrew. "You don't have to do this now," I said to Maris. "I do," she said. "Not because I think it earns anything, because I should have done it before it was desperate." Then Graham looked at me with the polished calm of a man deciding whether a crack in marble could be blamed on the installer. "Ms. Lane, perhaps you and my daughter should continue this privately." A month earlier, I would have obeyed the tone. Most people did. "No," I said. The word surprised him. It surprised me too, but less. "No?" No. I won't be moved out of the room to make the room easier. Maris's face shifted. Pride, pain, something like wonder. I looked at her. And you don't get to turn this into a claim because Dahlia asked me out. Dahlia made a tiny sound that might have been a cough. Blair looked ravenous. Maris took the blow without flinching. You're right. I mean it. I know. If this is about jealousy, it started there, she said, and the admission cut through every polished surface. At first, in the atrium, I hated seeing someone offer you what I was too cowardly to give. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing you looked freer, considering her invitation, than you ever looked waiting for me. The staff area had gone so quiet, I could hear the elevators beyond the wall. Maris turned to Dahlia. I'm sorry you were put in the middle of something you didn't create. Dahlia studied her for a moment. Thank you. Then Maris looked back at me. I love you, she said. No one moved. The sentence did not arrive like fireworks. It arrived like a door unlocked in a burning building. Necessary. Dangerous. Late. I love you, she repeated, softer, but still public. I was afraid of what that made visible. I was more afraid of losing the version of myself everyone approved of than I was of making you feel disposable. That is not love done well, but it is the truth of what I did. Graham's voice was low. Maris, enough. No, she faced him fully. I won't be clean for you at her expense. Blair whispered. This is insane. Maris's eyes flicked to her. No. This is what it looks like when the person you expected to stay useful becomes honest. For a second, I saw the office mythology break around her. The adored Maris Holt, untouchable and perfectly managed, stood in a staff lunch area admitting fear in front of donors, colleagues, her father, and the woman she had hurt. She looked less powerful than I had ever seen her. She also looked braver. My heart wanted to run to her. My self-respect held me still. I can't answer you here, I said. I'm not asking you to. You just told me you love me in front of half the building. Yes, a fragile, almost smile. My timing remains catastrophic. Despite everything, a laugh broke out of me. It was small and wet and startled. The room seemed to remember breathing. Graham said, We will discuss this later. Maris nodded. I imagine we will. Then she stepped aside, leaving the path to the door open, not pulling me toward her, not asking me to leave with her, just making room. That was how I knew the gesture had changed. The old Maris would have wanted my hand immediately, proof that the damage could be redeemed in the same scene. This Maris stood in the consequence and let me choose my own exit. I picked up my plate because some absurd part of me refused to leave good bread behind, nodded to Dahlia, and walked out into the atrium, alone. Rumors did what rumors do. By 3 o'clock, the story had become a dozen different stories. Maris had declared love over salad. I had been secretly dating the CEO's daughter. Dahlia had challenged Maris to a duel, which Theo insisted was his favorite version. Graham Holt had a heart attack, which was untrue, though apparently he did cancel a donor tour with the expression of a man reconsidering several estate plans. I did not hide. That was the hardest thing I did all day. Harder than hearing Maris say she loved me. Harder than telling her I could not answer. I stood by my model through the afternoon session and explained sightlines to strangers, while people pretended not to study my face. Some were kind, some were curious. Some clearly wondered what made me worth public self-destruction from a woman like Maris. For the first time, I did not feel obligated to convince them. At 5, Dahlia found me near the coat check. Well, she said, that was an unusually eventful lunch. I'm sorry. You keep apologizing for other people's weather. I know. She leaned against the wall beside me. For what it's worth, I believed her. I looked at her. I didn't say forgive her, Dahlia said. I said I believed her. Different file. I don't want to hurt you. That is a sweet impulse, but I'm not made of blown sugar. Dahlia, she sighed. I like you. I would have liked taking you to the gallery walk. I also knew you were still standing in the wreckage of something when I asked. I took a chance because you looked like you needed to remember doors existed. I did. Good. Her smile was crooked. Then my work here is emotionally inconvenient, but noble. I laughed, then felt my eyes sting. You deserve someone who says yes without half her heart looking backward. I do. Please remind me of that if I ever date another sculptor. I will. Dahlia hugged me. It was warm and brief, and without claim. Don't choose her because she finally got scared, she said near my ear. Choose her only if she learns what to do when she isn't scared anymore. I carried that sentence with me for weeks. Maris was reassigned from the museum project the following Monday. Officially, it was to avoid conflicts of interest. Unofficially, Graham Holt was furious. The reassignment cost her the lead on the most visible cultural project Glasshouse had won in 3 years. It also cost her proximity to me, which I suspected hurt more. Priya took over fully. Bellamy became oddly polite. Blair stopped making jokes in my hearing, though not because she had become kind. More likely because Maris had made cruelty expensive. I did not speak to Maris for 9 days except in passing. The time was not empty. It filled with myself. I finished my portfolio. I presented a revised accessibility study to Priya, who told me to apply for the permanent designer opening before she changed her mind and promoted someone less stubborn. I visited my mother on Sunday and told her a careful version of everything. She listened while making soup because my mother believed most emotional emergencies required onions. So this woman hid you, she said. Yes. And now she has stopped hiding. Yes. And you love her. I stared into my bowl. I didn't say that. You chopped carrots like you were sentencing them. You did not need to. I groaned. She hurt me. I know. My mother's voice gentled. Love does not require you to ignore that. What if forgiving her teaches her she can do it again? Then do not forgive the version of her who did it. See whether the version standing now is different enough to meet. That was annoyingly useful. The version standing now sent me one message after the reassignment became official. Maris, I won't contact you unless work requires it. I will be at the employee forum Thursday because my father plans to discuss conduct and disclosure, in a way that may affect you. You deserve to know. I read it 4 times. No apology attached, no plea. Information, not pressure. Thursday's employee forum was mandatory, which meant the auditorium filled with every expression known to office culture. Boredom, fear, curiosity, resentment disguised as professionalism. Graham Holt stood on stage beside HR and spoke about integrity, workplace boundaries, reputational discipline, and the importance of avoiding conflicts that distracted from client trust. He never said my name. He did not need to. Everyone knew which distraction had inspired the sermon. I sat beside Theo near the back, spine rigid. This feels like being strangled by a handbook, he whispered. Please don't make me laugh. I make no promises. Graham was halfway through a sentence about private conduct becoming public liability when Maris stood from the front row. The auditorium shifted. Her father stopped speaking. Maris, he said too calmly. She did not take the stage. She did not need to. Her voice carried from the aisle. If this forum is about me, it should name me. A ripple moved through the room. Graham's smile sharpened. This forum is about policy. Then apply it accurately. She held a folder at her side, but she did not open it. I failed to disclose a personal relationship with a colleague at the appropriate time. I accepted reassignment because that failure created a legitimate conflict. Ivy Lane did not misuse access, solicit favoritism, or compromise client work. Her contributions were documented before our relationship began, and corrected afterward because the record was incomplete. Any suggestion that her advancement is personal rather than professional is false. My hands went cold. She still had not looked at me. Graham said, "This is not necessary." "It is necessary because ambiguity protects the powerful," Theo whispered. Holy hell. Maris continued, "I also want to correct something less formal, but just as damaging. I denied knowing Ivy in front of colleagues and clients because I was afraid of scrutiny. That was my choice, not hers. Anyone using that moment to question her character is repeating my cowardice for entertainment." No one breathed. Or maybe I simply could not hear anything past the blood in my ears. Graham's face had gone very still. "We can discuss your concerns privately." "I learned that sentence from you," Maris said. "I'm finished using it." Then she sat down. She did not look back. She did not search for my reaction. She had done the thing where I was not positioned to reward her, exactly as I had asked in the archive room. The forum ended badly, in the sense that no one knew how to clap for a policy meeting that had turned into a quiet family coup. People filed out, murmuring. Theo touched my elbow. "Do you want extraction?" I shook my head. "I need a minute." He nodded and left me near the back row. Maris was speaking with HR near the stage. Graham had already disappeared through a side door with 2 executives. She looked composed, but from where I stood I could see her hand pressed against the seam of her trousers, thumb worrying the fabric. A private tell in a public room. I waited until HR left before approaching. She turned as if she had sensed me rather than seen me. "Hi," she said. Such a small word after so much wreckage. "Hi. I didn't know you were coming over." I didn't either. That almost smile again, tired and careful. "Okay." I looked at the empty stage, then back at her. "You corrected it." "I tried." "You didn't look at me." "I was afraid if I did, it would become about whether you forgave me." "And it wasn't." "No." She swallowed. "It was about whether I could tell the truth without making you carry the outcome." There were moments when language felt inadequate, not because nothing could be said, but because too many true things crowded the door at once. "My mother thinks I should meet the version of you standing now," I said. Maris blinked. "Your mother knows about me?" "She knows enough to dislike you responsibly." A startled laugh broke through her composure. It transformed her face so quickly I had to look away. "She sounds wise." "She is. Also dangerous with a soup ladle." "I'll prepare myself." "You are not meeting her yet." "Of course." But the corner of her mouth stayed soft. I looked down at my hands. "I'm still angry." "I know. I still don't trust you with certain rooms." "I know. I don't want to go back to what we were." Her expression sobered. "Neither do I." That answer mattered most. We did not kiss in the auditorium. We did not leave together. But when we walked out, we did so side by side through the main lobby at 6 in the evening, past reception, past the security desk, past 3 interns who abruptly became fascinated by the ceiling. Our hands did not touch. They didn't have to. For once, nothing about us was hidden. For once, the absence of touch did not feel like fear. Rebuilding was less cinematic than breaking. Rebuilding was less cinematic than breaking. It happened in forms, reassigned projects, awkward dinners, and short, honest questions where old secrecy would once have done the talking for us. 3 weeks after the forum, we went to a small restaurant near the river, not hidden across town but close enough to work that being seen was possible. When the server asked for a table for 2, Maris looked at me for pace rather than permission, and I said yes. At the table, she placed her hand palm up near the bread plate and waited. I called her careful. She admitted she was trying not to make caution into distance. When I finally put my hand in hers, no one gasped. No one threw us out. And the city did not collapse. That ordinariness nearly broke me. Later, on the riverwalk, beneath a plane tree shedding leaves onto the pavement, she asked before kissing me. I said yes, and when the kiss ended, she did not look around to see who had noticed. She simply kept holding my hand while strangers passed us like we were allowed to exist. By winter, I had the permanent designer position. Priya claimed full credit for bullying me into applying. Theo made me a paper crown out of rejected plotter sheets and wrote basement royalty across the front. Dahlia sent a card with a drawing of a bench under a rain garden and the words, "For roots that finally go somewhere." I kept it pinned above my desk. Maris moved out of her father's executive track and into an independent strategy role after a month of negotiations cold enough to freeze the legal department. She did not pretend it was easy. Some mornings she arrived at work looking like she had slept badly. Some evenings she called me and said, "I need to be angry for 10 minutes before I become reasonable." I learned to say, "Set a timer," and she did. Her popularity changed. That was one of the consequences neither of us had fully expected. People still admired her, but differently. The ones who had loved the untouchable version felt betrayed by her humanity. The ones who had feared her began bringing her harder truths. Blair transferred to another account team and became chilly in elevators. Graham Holt addressed me with exquisite politeness whenever necessary, and otherwise acted as if I were a structural column he had not approved, but could not remove. By winter, I had the permanent designer position. Priya claimed full credit for bullying me into applying. Theo made me a paper crown from rejected plotter sheets, and Dahlia sent a card with a drawing of a bench under a rain garden and the words, "For roots that finally go somewhere." Maris moved out of her father's executive track and into an independent strategy role after negotiations, cold enough to freeze the legal department. Her popularity changed. Some people liked her less once she stopped being untouchable, and others trusted her more because she had become harder to flatter. Blair transferred teams. Graham Holt addressed me with exquisite politeness whenever necessary, and otherwise treated me like a structural column he had not approved but could not remove. My mother met Maris in February, handed her onions at the door, and made her chop for soup before deciding she was prettier than her behavior had suggested. Maris survived, cried only from the onions, and thanked me later for letting her become someone I could bring home. The final test came, as final tests often do, disguised as a normal afternoon. Glasshouse held a spring reception for the completed museum project. By then, everyone knew enough about Maris and me that no one sensible called it gossip anymore. We arrived separately because I'd been at the museum overseeing installation repairs, and Maris had come from a client meeting. The new atrium was full of soft light, suspended walkways, planted terraces, and visitors moving through the space exactly as I had imagined months earlier at my kitchen table. The courtyard transition worked. Wheelchair users did not have to take a back route. Maintenance staff had direct access that did not force them through the cafe. Children ran along the low wall until guards gently redirected them. It was not perfect, but it was humane. Dahlia found me near the rain garden, glowing with professional triumph. "Admit it," she said. "The drainage is beautiful. It is emotionally moving." "I knew you'd come around." She hugged me. Her new girlfriend, a ceramicist named Min, waved from beside the refreshments with clay dust somehow still on her sleeve. Seeing Dahlia happy did not erase the tenderness of what might have been. It made it clean. Some doors mattered because they opened even if you did not walk through them. Across the atrium, Maris was speaking with a museum trustee. She saw Dahlia hug me. For a second, old awareness passed through her face. Not possession, not panic. Just history, acknowledging itself. Then she smiled at Dahlia and returned to her conversation. I loved her fiercely in that moment. Later, a young intern approached me near the model display. She looked nervous, holding a notebook to her chest. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Ivy Lane?" "I am." "I saw your open studio model last fall. I'm applying for the junior program, and I wanted to ask how you got people to take your circulation studies seriously. I mean, before they knew they should." The question struck close enough to make me gentle. "I stopped presenting them like support work," I said, "and I found people who understood that how bodies move through space is not secondary to how space looks." She wrote that down as if it were wisdom, and not a lesson I had learned by bleeding quietly in a very expensive office. Then Maris appeared beside me with 2 glasses of water. The intern looked at her and froze. "Ms. Holt." Maris handed me 1 glass first. "Please, don't let me interrupt." The intern glanced between us, curiosity dawning with the terrified delight of someone realizing office mythology could stand close enough to wear perfume. "I didn't know you two knew each other," she said. There it was. The old sentence returned wearing a new face. For a heartbeat, I remembered the corridor, the sandwiches, the skylight, Maris's beautiful public smile cutting me out of her life. Maris remembered too. I felt it in the way her shoulder stilled beside mine. Then she smiled. Not polished, not defensive, not afraid. "We do," she said. "I'm Maris, Ivy's girlfriend." She looked at me after she said it, not to ask whether she could take the words back, but to make sure they still felt right in the room. I took her hand. The intern's eyes widened, then she smiled with the relief of someone too young to understand the whole story, but old enough to recognize courage when it stood quietly in front of her. "That's really cool," she said. "It is," I said. Maris's thumb brushed mine once, a private motion in public light. After the reception, we stayed until the atrium emptied, and the cleaning crew began moving chairs. The museum lights dimmed to a soft evening glow. Rain tapped against the glass roof, turning the city beyond it silver. I stood at the edge of the courtyard path and watched water run exactly where Dahlia's channels guided it, disappearing into beds of dark soil and new green. Maris came up beside me. "What are you thinking?" "That everything important eventually involves water going where it shouldn't." She laughed softly. "Dahlia?" "Dahlia. A wise woman." "Yes." Maris was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever wonder?" "About her?" "Yes." I considered lying because easy kindness tempted me. Then I chose the better thing we had built. "Sometimes I wonder about the version of me who was ready for her," I said. "But I don't want to be that version instead." Maris nodded. The answer hurt her a little. She let it. "Thank you for telling me." I turned to her. "Do you ever miss being untouchable?" A smile touched her mouth, faint and rueful. "Sometimes. Usually during budget meetings." "Only then?" "No." She looked up at the rain-streaked glass. "Sometimes I miss how simple cowardice felt before I knew its cost." "That's honest." "I'm trying to make a habit of it." I stepped closer. "For what it's worth, I don't want you fearless." "No?" "No. Fearless people are often just careless people with better branding." That startled a laugh from her. "I want you afraid and still choosing," I said. Her eyes softened. "I can do that." "I know." The words surprised us both. Trust had not returned as a lightning strike. It had grown like the rain garden beside us, engineered and wild at once, fed by storms that used to flood everything. I knew Maris could still be proud, still afraid, still sharp enough to wound if she forgot herself. I also knew she had learned to come back to truth without making me drag her there. She held out her hand, palm up, the same way she had at the restaurant months earlier. I placed mine in it. We walked through the completed atrium together, past the model display, past the glass doors, past our reflections moving side by side in the dark. Outside the rain had softened to mist. Maris opened her umbrella, then paused. "Share," she asked. There was a time when sharing cover with her would have meant shrinking into secrecy, angling our bodies so no one could read us. Now the sidewalk was full of museum staff, donors leaving late, strangers hurrying toward taxis, and neither of us stepped away. "Yes," I said. Under the umbrella, her shoulder brushed mine. The city smelled like wet stone and spring leaves. At the curb, she lifted our joined hands and kissed my knuckles. Not dramatically, not for an audience, just because she wanted to, and because I let her. No one applauded. No one gasped. A taxi splashed through a puddle and made us both jump back laughing. Maris cursed under her breath with such offended elegance that I laughed harder, and she looked at me like my laughter was still something precious, only now precious did not mean hidden. When we reached the corner, she asked, "Home?" I thought of my apartment with her blue mug now sitting openly on my shelf, of her spare earrings and the brass dish I had bought her for my place, of all the rooms we had stopped dividing into private and public versions of ourselves. I thought of the corridor where she had once pretended not to know me, and the museum where she had said girlfriend, as if the word had earned daylight. "Home," I said. We crossed when the light changed, hand in hand, not rushing, not hiding. The umbrella tilted badly between us because neither of us had ever been graceful at sharing shelter. Rain silvered the street ahead. Maris squeezed my fingers once, asking without words if I was still there. I squeezed back, answering not because she needed reassurance, but because I wanted to be understood. By the time we reached the other side, the city had blurred into reflections around our feet, and for once, every version of us was walking in the same direction.